Welcome to the Startup of the Year podcast, where each episode we showcase exciting new companies from around the world. This podcast is produced by Established, creators of the Startup of the Year program. Established is focused on helping organizations with their innovation, startup, and communication strategies.
Hello, welcome back. I'm Frank Gruber, your host, also the co-CEO of Established and Established Ventures, managing partner. We've got a great show today. Before we jump in, I want to quickly note that we've got the MIC, the Monthly Innovation Circle, which is part of the Established Network, and you can join it. It started in March. You can join it every third Thursday, and we have different guests, different speakers, different interviews, and it's just a lot of fun. So go over to est.us/the MIC 2025 to get on that. It's going to be a great event in the future here as we continue to roll through the year. And for those not familiar, Established Network is actually a network of entrepreneurs, investors, thought leaders, and we all kind of have a collective. We all want to collaborate and see a better vision for the future. So you can join that over at established.network. Today's guest is Jared Goralnick. He and I go way back from our times in DC. He's a 3-time CEO and founder. His early company, I don't know if it was his first company, I think it might have been an early company, Wayfind, demoed at one of our early tech cocktail DC events. I think it was like 2007 or 2008. Since then, he's gone on to move to the West Coast, and he's worked on product development teams for some huge companies, including Microsoft, LinkedIn, Upwork, and a couple of unicorns, Go1 and Articulate. And he's now launching his new product of his own called
Your360.ai.
And it's an AI-powered self-evaluation and coaching tool. And we're excited to catch up today, talk about everything from DC over to Silicon Valley and all the lessons learned from the big companies and how AI is shaping our changing our professional growth in the future here. So welcome, Jared. Thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Frank. You're right. I think you were I feel that was my first video interview back in maybe 2008 with Wayfind. And you were such a wonderful guide to the DC tech community and getting involved in the product world back then. And it's great to still be in your life almost 20 years later.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, it's been wild, right? Like we've known each other for such a long time, and it's been great to see you kind of continue to go and do these amazing things with these different companies. So let's dial it back though and talk about that Wayfind first tech cocktail event and like what inspired, that and what's been going on, obviously, as you continue to get involved here with product development.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, the Wayfind days, that was inspired by, I guess, two things. So first off was having a consulting business that focused on productivity training and realizing everybody spent their time in email. So we built a product that helped you to get away from your email and find you if there was something urgent. But the other side of that was actually folks like yourself, because I had been doing this consulting services business for some time. And suddenly with DC and with social media and blogging, like all these things were happening around like the mid 2000s where I saw just an opportunity to do something both more with the community and more in the product and at scale. And that's really what inspired me both to, focus on that area, but also to do something that was just part of something bigger. And that was really by seeing others that were doing that in the community, spreading the word and amplifying our voices. And I know you're doing Tech Cocktail, I was doing Ignite and Bootstrap. Like we had all these different events. And I think that really ignited in me this desire to build a company that could reach more folks than just kind of my local area.
Absolutely. And what were some of the challenges or biggest challenges you faced just in DC as you were trying to launch a product and grow there versus, now fast forward to now and you're launching it in Silicon Valley?
My move out to DC was not really a let's raise capital and focus on being in the center of the tech gravity. It was more of a personal decision. Once I sold my previous company, Set Consulting, I kind of had a decision of where would I live if I could choose anywhere. Because that first company I started right where I'd gone to college at College Park. And it was more, what was I after? And it was kind of the culture and the nature of some of the West Coast of the Bay Area. So it worked out really well because, of course, being in the center of Silicon Valley or the center of tech, it created opportunities both for raising capital, for finding partners who were going through a similar journey, for hiring talent. But my motivation was really just on that personal side. And now I'm really happy to be here. Certainly, you were talking earlier before we started about the seasons in Maine, and we don't quite have seasons the same way. It's as a trail runner for me, this is definitely my happy place year round. So that's a lot of what has drawn me to here. And I think today it's easier than ever to start a company anywhere. And I'm certainly happy to be in the center of AI, But there's opportunities for everyone now. It's really great. And I think that a lot of that really started in the mid 2000s. Like what we were doing in DC, I think now happens everywhere where there's these local communities that are really supporting entrepreneurs. And, I think in some ways that was an even stronger community to get started because you're very small fish in a very large pond here in the Bay Area. Whereas there, people really leaned in to help, much like how I was on Tech Cocktail or Somewhat Frank well before we, had customers. And it's because we wanted to support one another in that local community. And that really makes a difference for getting started.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've worn many, hats now in your career. You were a startup founder. You went over and were a big tech leader over at Microsoft and LinkedIn work and others. What's kind of the thread that's kind of connected all these different chapters of your career and now brought you back to startup life?
That's a great question. When I think about why I ran a couple of startups, I did that for 12 years. It came down to sort of like, I think there's three reasons why people start companies. It could be for the freedom, it could be for the money, or it could be for the impact. And I could go on more with that theory, but I realized in the end that the reason why I did it was for the impact. And that was what, got me to go from a consulting business with a small scope to a product business with a larger scope. And then ultimately, once like the product that we had built at Awayfind became sort of free in iOS and Android, like for everybody, not through our product, we realized, that wasn't where we were going to have that tremendous impact. So if you look at the places I've been since, so like at Microsoft, it was Skype and then ultimately Microsoft Teams. At LinkedIn, it was LinkedIn Recruiter. At each of these jobs, I was working on the market-leading product. And while I wasn't necessarily, obviously I wasn't the CEO in those cases, every decision that I was part of was touching millions or tens or even hundreds of millions of people. And that to me is what has been motivating. So I'd say the first part was impact. I'd say the second and more kind of refining part in the last 8 or 9 years has been a particular type of impact. So it's always that I've wanted to do positive work, but from LinkedIn Recruiter to Upwork's Marketplace and then Go One and Articulate, which are products in the learning and development space, I've realized that the impact that really drives me is helping people to be the best version of themselves at work, in their careers. So at Upwork and LinkedIn, that was in hiring and finding the right job. And then at Go One and Articulate, it was sort of being the best version of yourself through training and skilling. And that's really been the theme for me is how do you make that impact in that particular area of people's lives?
Oh, that's interesting because your consulting company was also productivity to help people with productivity. It kind of ties back to helping people. Seems like you want to help people with constant threads. And so now being at a big company, I've been at big companies as well. What's the kind of, misconception or biggest misconception that you think people have about working in a larger organization versus working in startups?
I mean, it obviously takes some navigation to figure out how to really have your voice heard in large organizations, but I'm not sure if this is exactly the question, but there's some lessons that I've taken from small company to big company world and then vice versa. And in terms of the former, going to a big company after having touched every part of building a company and building a product in my 12-person organizations that I started, I had a perspective that was much further than as a typical product manager where you just kind of ship features and, manage an engineering and design team, or through influence, you manage them. And what I mean is to me, I had a perspective that was, all from customer discovery to customer support to sales to operations, et cetera. And that allowed me to, when I made decisions about what's going to have an impact for our customers or for our business, to really look beyond just the features that were in the product, but finding areas, whether it be in pricing or in customer success, et cetera, where we could have a bigger impact. So that much more broad horizontal view that I got from running a small company really helped me to make much more holistic and better decisions as a product leader. And I think that's what allowed me to have better empathy with our customers and to have a better voice within those organizations, because I could see myself and see it in those roles. And then fast forward to today, where I'm starting Your360. In this particular case, now I've seen for 10 years in these larger organizations what good looks like in each of these functions. So whether it be in growth or marketing or success or even accounting, when you were doing it yourself in a scrappy way, you learn things on the job. And, you did things all right, but you certainly didn't see what world-class looked like. And there's no better way to learn than through working closely with some of the world's experts, which I certainly got to do at many of those companies. So I'm hoping that I can bring some of that expertise to this next organization, as well as having been working now for more than 20 years, bringing some of the best people that I've worked with, as well as knowing how to hire. So all of those things around recognizing expertise and bringing experts with you, I think really helps, both from having worked in bigger companies and just being later in your career.
Well, that's really interesting about that whole answer is interesting, but the beginning part around like having that vision, just being able to see, you run a company, so you see why you're doing it, why there's impact, not just pushing product features and whatnot. So that's interesting that, going in reverse does help with that for sure. And then, you kind of answered my next question, which more or less was how's your approach? I haven't asked you, so I think you're reading minds here. How's your approach, kind of changed your launch now with your new product, Your360? And it sounds like, team, obviously having that team and having that overall experience of running products has changed it. But is there anything else that you can think of that's like changed your leadership style or just overall has changed how you're approaching it?
I think what's different in terms of approaching a company now versus before is, with a Wayfind, I think we were capped at market size. And, I know you run established and you're an investor, and obviously there's kind of three things you look for. You look for kind of team, you look for product, and you look for market size. But if you don't have market size, you really, doesn't matter how good the other things are. And I think this time around, I'm looking for a bigger market. And that's something that both was a lesson learned from a Wayfind, as well as when you're working at companies that are making hundreds of millions or billions of dollars for the product that you're working on, you just don't go after small opportunities. So this time around, I just have more realism about that you have to start with a problem that is big enough in a market that's big enough. So that's one of the biggest differences in how I'm approaching things today.
That's a huge difference for sure. And obviously now you can recognize that, right? Like that you're going after the bigger problems, which are, obviously bigger impact, bigger returns, bigger everything, right? So that's really an interesting how time kind of made that happen. But all right, let's talk about your new venture, U360, and it's .ai as well. So if you want to go find it, it's U360.ai. Don't want to forget that part. How did you come up with the idea, and why is now the right time for this?
So yeah, I'm really excited to be working on this. And over the years, people have asked me, when are you going to start your next thing, Jared? Like, are you going to go back? And I always said, well, I don't have an idea that I really want to work on that I feel is going to have a larger impact. And now we do. And, in 2025, I think we're all experiencing this sort of the largest workplace transformation that has ever happened in our lives, and probably in workplace history with AI. And most of us don't have the feedback to understand, well, what do we do to adapt in this world? What is our value? And similarly, there's fewer managers than ever before. It's sort of been hollowing out middle management, as you all have read in the headlines. Mm-hmm. So Your360.ai is really the answer to that. It is a voice AI agent that acts as an executive coach and interviews your peers, your manager, your direct reports, your partners, your colleagues, et cetera, to figure out what are your blind spots and what are your superpowers. And we use the same approach that you would use if you were a CEO that hired an executive coach for $15,000. So we don't cut any corners there. We use interview 360s using really those best practices from coaching. And then we present you with not just a report, but we actually walk you through that report and help you to build a development plan. And our customers are telling us it's really the most actionable, useful feedback they've received in their entire careers, and they now actually have the exact steps they need to go forward with it.
Right. You're bringing a product to market that's going to help, both personally and professionally, folks that are out there. So folks can go onto the site right now, or now that it's out there, once it's out there, and can try it. And it's got a really interesting way of pulling people in to give it a try. And do you want to talk about how you kind of created that approach and what you're hoping for folks that kind of lean in that way?
Sure. So you're referring to kind of the marketing approach that we've taken for people to experience it.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a big button. It's clicking. It's making me want to click it. It says, try it here. And it looks a lot like what we're used to. If you've used ChatGPT, it's got the circle and it's going to start talking to you, I believe, by just clicking that. Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
So, I mean, so you started this point about how 360s are powerful. Yeah. I would venture to guess that you haven't had an interview-based 360 because those take tens of hours from a coach to do, and they're done over voice. And they're just very inaccessible. Like, people have had maybe survey-based 360s, or most folks just have a performance review at the end of the year, which is very ineffective because people don't trust what they're sharing with the manager that's capturing it. People don't trust what they're hearing from their manager, who's aligned, number one, with them. Number one, with like the manager's aligned with themselves. Number two, with their company. And then maybe if you're lucky, with you as the employee that they're supporting. And what that means is, there's two parts in there. One, if you're going to get effective feedback, you want someone neutral who's on your side or certainly isn't tied to your compensation and to your promotions and, all of those things. So you need a coach, you need someone in the middle. And the second part is when you're capturing feedback or delivering it, voice makes an enormous difference because you're able to probe and personalize to get the meaning behind things. So it's not just, what are Frank's superpowers, like, and then give me one sentence, which is what you get in a survey, but really, well, why does that matter to the company? Why does that matter to them? How might they leverage that to really make a greater impact with their organization? And so to that end, like, people just aren't used to what is possible with some of these voice-led experiences in coaching or just in general with technology. So on our homepage, we have on the top right the ability to simply try that out. And it's only like a 3 to 5 minute conversation. And it's not the real product in the sense that, you haven't created an account or anything yet. But it's just a chance for people to get a feel for what it's like to interact with our AI coach, who we call Coach Tam, to both do a quick practice exercise and to even use her as a way to learn about our product, to ask, how does it work? To think about how you might apply it to yourself or to your teams. We really, people have this sort of conflated understanding of what 360s are, and they haven't really experienced great voice products yet, I don't believe. So we wanted to kind of cover both of those angles by letting people to try it.
Yeah, very cool. And something I did as a survey based, I don't think I've ever done, like you said, an interview based 360. So I can imagine that could take a very long time. So that's really a unique opportunity for folks at a price point that's probably way less. I don't know what it
Yeah.
costs to do an interview
Well,
style. But
I mean, so
I have no
just to
idea.
interview you, if I
Yeah.
was doing a 360 with a coach, they'd
Mhm.
be charging $500 just to talk to you, So then you multiply that by 10 people and then synthesizing it. So yeah, they start minimum at over $10,000, an
Wow.
interview-based 360 with a coach, whereas our product is launching with $200 pricing.
Wow.
And it's at the same bar. We're working with a woman named Rebecca Glenn, who wrote a book called Feedback Forward, which is basically the definitive guide for interview-based 360s. She was trained at Hudson Institute of Coaching and has been doing executive coaching for more than a dozen years. And we've been working, hand in hand with her, as well as a number of other coaches who are using our product and giving us feedback to ensure that it meets those same best practices. Now, I'm not going to say we're a replacement for a coach by any stretch, but I would say that we can really solve for the first 4 to 6 weeks of what you might do with a coach in terms of uncovering how you're performing and where your opportunities at work, and then getting you sort of that initial springboard into some of the areas you want to work on. And then you might very much work with a coach from there to really make sure that you're making progress on it.
So obviously a great opportunity for folks because it's not something that's been accessible for folks, at that price point probably. And there's an individual and then there's obviously a team-based approach as well. And obviously for larger teams, you got the enterprise. What's, with that, what are some of your goals with this as far as, getting it out there and who do you really want to get this in front of?
It's a great question. So, I've been in HR tech now for 8 years with those companies I mentioned earlier. And generally, HR is a very top-down sale. So you're selling to an HR leader and maybe you have a manager involved in the sale or like a line of business, but usually it's this top-down thing. And that's because these are big sales. They're big and complicated in terms of the integrations, in terms of the setup, in terms of just all of it. So, but we wanted to do something different. We wanted to be at a price point where any individual could try it for themselves. They could use their discretionary budget that they have, which certainly most tech companies have this budget. A lot of companies can say you could spend $500 or $1,000 to attend a conference or, take a Coursera course. So we wanted to be in that amount where you could just swipe your credit card without thinking about it. So our initial audience for this is individual contributors and managers that are just looking for this feedback for themselves. About a quarter of the people that fill out or rather provide feedback for the folks going through a 360 are signing up for their own or have been during our kind of stealth period. So we think it will start to spread in organizations because they see how this is a much more delightful way to give feedback and also a much more effective way to give feedback. And then they want that for themselves. So we're starting there. We ultimately are expecting to be sold a lot to companies, much like, you use Slack with your team and then, there's a lot of value to bring it to the whole organization. There's some things we can do with insights across an organization when more people use it. So there's some incentives there. But we want to make sure that this is not gated based on cost or based on permission from anyone. But then, of course, to provide ways that organizations and teams can use it as well.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about, a little bit more about your maybe some of the partnerships and things you're looking for. Are you looking for partnerships or HR platforms that you want to learn, connect with this product, or is it more like just get it in front of anybody you can?
I mean, at this stage where we're literally launching the individual product tomorrow, we're looking for people to use it for themselves or for their team. I guess if I had one request, it would be is if you're on a team of, 5 to 15 people and you'd like to, provide them some more insight as to what they could be working on. Like if you're a manager that has a team that is looking for coaching or development or feedback, this is a really great way to simply swipe a credit card and give them something that's quite transformative. I mean, I've been a manager for 25 years, and I mean, I really, really wish I was able to have given this to all of my teams. So that's what we're looking for right now is really teams to go through it. In the long run, yes, we'll be, I'm sure, doing partnerships and integrations and so forth. But at this stage, it's really just getting it to more folks and learning what organizations are going to want so we can build that out.
Okay. Let's talk about obviously AI is a big part of this, right? So, and there's been a little bit of pushback on AI, well actually AI doing like, people are using it for self-care, things like that. So
Yeah.
how would you address that with this kind of a product? Because that could be something somebody brings up, I think, to address it like, oh, it's AI. So maybe you shouldn't listen as much as whatever. So maybe talk a little bit more about that because I know there's a group of, people are using it for mental health, for example, and there's been some dire situations there. So talk a little bit more about that and how you're addressing that with this product.
Great. So I think there's two responses to that. So the first is I do think a lot of people are getting tremendous value, whether it be coaching or tutoring or even therapy from AI. And there's a lot of data that shows that. Of course, I mean, I've read the recent Times expose and, some terrible, scary things have happened when some of these products have gone off the rails. But I do think in the long run, this is going to be a very positive and democratizing impact for people to get the support and the insight that can be unlocking for them. But even putting that aside, because that's not really our area, we're not trying to provide mental health or just generally anything related to health. What we're doing is we're using AI to get you feedback from the people who know you best. So it's more of a process of working as a coach that synthesizes things and knows how to ask you where you would like to go, as opposed to giving you advice or as opposed to being kind of a wrapper around the foundational models and just being a different interface for it. So for us, our whole value is not just that we use AI, it's that we bring to light the insights from the folks around you who before either didn't have the time or didn't know how to share. And we do that both from our method as well as the fact that we can anonymize what they've shared. So it just creates a safe space for people to share. So it's more about our approach than it's about specifically AI that is bringing these insights to folks.
Yeah. All right. So let's fast forward 3 to 5 years. Where do you see this going? What's your vision for your 360?
I mean, our vision is to unlock every professional's career through transformative feedback. And right now, we're starting with individuals and organizations to help bring them self-awareness. Ultimately, we want to be able to help them to achieve the behavior change that they would like to achieve. And we're hoping to really demonstrate for organizations that there's been a return on investment in some of this this coaching that we're providing. Now, where does that specifically go? Is it anytime feedback? Is it coaching? There's all kinds of different directions, but we're going to listen to our customers to figure out what they want. So, 360s are already a pretty widespread practice in organizations. We believe that we're 100 times better for 100th of the cost. So that's a compelling start for organizations. But ultimately, having this access to this developmental data for individuals, we want to help them to leverage the insights that come from it to really be that springboard for being the best version of themselves at work. And we also want to anonymize this in such a way that organizations can understand what's going on in their organizations and adapt to, a time of rapid change. So we're really excited about where we're starting today. We just want to reach more people, and then we'll figure over time how we, create greater leverage from these insights.
That's intriguing. The part about the employers being able to learn from it in a way that's, obviously not going to be specific to employees, but, just learning how the organization is working without having to go out and pull everybody. Because like you said earlier, you're not going to get the exact, maybe 100% accurate response. All right.
Yeah,
That's great.
one of the special things about large language models is you can just, goes without saying perhaps, but you can work with really large amounts of data and find patterns. And that just wasn't possible before. There's been no company has really brought together this type of developmental sort of free-form data before into a useful understanding, or to put it boring, data set, right? Like, we're hoping to in a very safe and confidential way, bring to light some of these patterns. And I think that can be really powerful for companies.
I mean, I could already write some of your trend reports, right? Like before you, like, are we, being overworked in the United States? Are there enough, of this or that? And I think, are people isolated, because of the remote work? I mean, there's so many different directions you could take this, and I'm sure that the learnings are going to be really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, core to our values, though, is you're really keeping, this information. I mean, core to this is really the confidentiality and the safety behind this information. So we will tread very, very carefully. So there's obviously employer-oriented products, and there's products that are, it's all based on this confidential relationship between what we call the learner, or sort of the coachee, and our AI coach. So that's really where it starts. But if we can do that in a safe way, then yes, we want to provide insights. But I only say that just because, yes, we'd love to share workplace data and all these things, but our whole product is based on trust. And that is at the core of everything we do with the decisions in terms of how we utilize this data.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm glad you highlighted that, so folks didn't get confused about how we're using the data. And I think what I was thinking more or less was just, looking across everybody, right? Like, what does that look like? Well, how are employees doing in the offices and workplaces they are versus, I wasn't thinking as much as unique, but I was just thinking like the pull from that are probably going to be really interesting. So thank you for clarifying that as well. I don't want somebody to be, think that this isn't a safe space to share, because it definitely is going to be for your users. All right. So with that in mind, you talked a little bit about it, where, future hat on, like, AI is driving things faster than furiously down a path here. And, with this, you've got this coach. How long does this coach work with you for? And, like, what does that runway look like? And then how do you see it reshaping your, coaching and self-coaching and personal development for folks that are using this?
At the stage we're at right now, if you were to use this product with your team, so if it's a whole group of people that are going through this, then it would take about 2 to 3 hours over the course of a month to do an interview with our coach, to give feedback on a few peers, and then to walk through the learnings with our coach. Almost all that, most of the times actually at the end, people spend more than an hour talking to our voice AI coach at the end. Like, that's what they choose to do, to really go through the report and, understand and interact with and do what's called meaning making from that data. So that's the most important part, is that very end, and people voluntarily are spending over an hour with our AI coach on it. If you weren't doing it with a team and it's just you, then maybe that would be a couple hours. But that's where we kind of are in the journey right now, is the ability to deliver, I think, the most comprehensive self-awareness that anyone has ever received just from the report, and then being able to really interact with it or engage with it with our coach, and then finally to do a development plan. So given all this information, you don't have to act on all of it. How do you take feedback as a gift and choose what to accept? How do you decide which things, aren't important to you? And also, how do you make this manageable and pick 1 or 2 things you can actually, take steps with? And how can our coach brainstorm with you to figure out what that looks like? People don't tend to share the 360 reports with their manager, but they often do share the development plan. So they show, like, here's what we're going to do from this process that I went through. Here's my learnings. So that's where we're at today. I think it's open exactly where we go from there, whether it be another 360, whether it be pulse reports, whether it be anytime feedback. There's a lot of things, but we're going to see what our customers are looking for. But today it's a couple hours over the course of a month for, life-changing insights.
Interesting. Have you taken and gone through the whole process? I'm assuming you have, multiple times.
I've gone through it many times with lots of different former colleagues and present. I was the first one who got a report, and I remember the look on my face when I saw the report. I was honestly angry, because it was so good. And as I said, being a manager for so long, I just wish that they could have seen that. That was my first, like, aha, oh my gosh, this is crazy. The second one was, as I just alluded to, when we first released our voice walkthrough of the 360, and the very first person who went through it, they got cut off at 60 minutes because we didn't realize there was a 60-minute limit in our, like, voice AI platform. That was there, we thought, for a good reason, but we just did not expect people to spend an hour talking to an AI coach. but
Wow.
they were just being vulnerable and sharing stories and getting comfortable and laughing and all kinds of things that I honestly like. That part, I wasn't the first one to experience like that.
Mhm.
I mean, I guess I kind of knew so much about the product that it was hard for me to test it because I was kind of in it, you know? But
Mhm.
that was where we experienced that with our customers for the first time. And
Mhm.
that really blew my mind because I realized that it wasn't just about kind of awareness and it wasn't a report, but it was starting to get into that behavior change and action.
Interesting. It made me think of the movie Her for a second. Like we're talking to our AIs and like,
Yeah.
is there gonna be a romance here on your product platform?
Yeah.
Hopefully not. Hopefully they can keep it
Uh,
straight here. All right, so let's look. We'll kind of wrap this up here. A little bit of personal reflection here on your, looking back at 2008, 2007, when you're, your younger self, and now, starting a Wayfind and other products, and being there and launching that. Is there one thing that you think of like now that you're like wish you had known, or one piece of advice that you'd like would have shared with yourself?
you mentioned that you were going to ask me this, so I've been thinking about it a little bit, and for the most part, the answer is no, because the lessons from small companies ended up applying to big companies. And, I mean, one of the big differences between that time and this time is we had a business that was in a hockey ship with a hockey stick, with a Wayfind before. But ultimately, we were disrupted by mobile. Like, we built a product that sent you text messages and called you, and then suddenly push notifications came out. Like, the whole game changed. And this time, instead of hopefully being disrupted by the technology change, we're trying to ride the technology change, of course, with AI and voice AI specifically this time around. I mean, I couldn't have told myself that. I don't think it would be fair to say, hey, there might be a platform shift that's coming, Jared. Like that's not fair. I mean, when it comes to learnings, it often comes from our hardest moments. And something I often will tell people is I feel there's two types of folks in the world: those who have had to make payroll and those who haven't. There's just something of perspective it gives you when kind of people's livelihood is on the line. And when you see where there's a really short runway and have to make really hard decisions, and it kind of makes every other problem smaller. And while on the one hand, I think that like there's a tried and true path of, go work at Google or something and learn product management from the best. But on the other hand, you don't get that perspective of both the whole company and of some of that pain, which I think is actually for good, because it helps you to be able to deal with the ups and downs and to realize both in your personal and your professional life that these things just don't matter. So I I really am proud of or am okay with some of that hardship that I experienced because they made me into a better person and a better leader and a better partner. So I don't have great advice except for maybe sharing that all of this is going to compound. You might not know it yet, but it's going to. Trust me and enjoy the ride.
That's great advice, Jared. And I love that perspective about, having to make payroll versus not. I've similar to you have done both, and you feel that you do come across folks that have not, and it's a little bit harder for them to understand that situation, I think, and not be in that same, not being able to maybe see it from your perspective because of that, not having that, having gone through that hardship, or whatever. So
And
I,
you've
I
gone through
definitely,
that too.
yeah, I feel it. I feel it. Yeah.
And I spent 10 years working for other people. You've just run your own organizations through all that. I've seen so many pivots on your side, and that's amazing because every
Mm,
time you're bringing others along with you. It's not just you and not just you and Jen. It's really inspiring to see folks that have held to that path because it's not the easy one.
for sure. And I appreciate that. All right. So, Jared, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Thanks for sharing your insights, your journey, your vision. And I love that last perspective because it's not one you hear about as much as and people don't talk about it as much, but there's a difference when you feel it and you have to, like you said, go out and make those tough decisions sometimes. But it is a learning, and it definitely strengthens you in the end. So I do appreciate it as well. All right. So for those out there that are trying to start up, there's no better time than today. Jared's doing it right now. He's starting up. And so get it out, get it going, and get started because you can obviously launch and iterate. It's not always going to be what you thought to begin with. In doing so, we'd love to have you join our established network and community. You can have access to different events and support and other folks, insights similar to Jared. Just go sign up at established.network. We do have our mic call every Thursday. Go over there and you can learn more about it at est.us/the mic 2025. Until next time, thank you so much, Jared. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it and looking forward to your success with your new product, Your360.ai. Until next time, I'm Frank Ripper signing off and appreciate you all for being here.
Thanks for listening to the Startup of the Year podcast. Be sure to subscribe and we'll be back with another episode soon.